Want me to log out after my talk, or do I stay on? Yeah, I'll hang out and listen if you don't mind. You can talk, I promise.
I'll mute until you need me.
Yeah. Keane's how you say your name, right? Not Kean? Yeah. Okay.
I call myself Keane. My
Okay.
mom calls me Kean.
Well, I'm going with your mom. I'm sorry.
My
my,
dad called me
my mom
King.
calls me you son of a bitch, but I'd prefer you just call me Scott.
Testing. Test 1, 2, 3. Testing. Test 1, 2, 3. Hello, Carmen Branje viewers. How are you doing this evening? This is a new setup for us. This is the first ever live episode of the Carmen Branje show. I hope you're all surviving in the quarantine. I have my Corona beer here. I don't know. Is that in poor taste? I don't think so. I've heard that Corona beer actually helps to prevent. It's a preventative measure against the coronavirus. So that's what I'm drinking tonight. So we have some guests tonight. I have two pretty awesome guests that are going to come on and talk about some pretty cool stuff. First guy, his name is Scott Sears. He's coming at us from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and he is a product designer there. So we're going to talk about some stuff around design. We're going to shoot the shit, drink some beer, and talk about what it's like to be a product designer in Toronto versus Halifax. And maybe we'll talk about a few other things. My second guest, his name is Keane Quiblian. I hope I have your last name right, dude. It's been it's kind of it's one of those weirdish names, but I'm sure you'll correct me when I bring him on. So Keane is he's an Android developer at Loblaw Digital, one of the great companies in Toronto where you can do your trade either as a designer or a developer. So we're going to talk to Keane too about development and design. So let's start the show. All right. So we are starting the show. This is the Carmen Branje show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a bunch of things to get to before we get our guests up. You know, a couple of things have been happening over the course of this coronavirus. We've all been sort of, you know, dealing with this frustrating situation. And, you know, people around my neighborhood are sort of dealing with it in different ways. You know, some people are going for walks. Some people are riding their bike. Well, in my neighborhood, somebody is going around and planting VHS tapes around the ground of a certain nature. Let's see here. So this was this was in the middle of my street, and this, when you look at this video, it really is the video that keeps on giving. So this was a VHS tape that was in the middle of my street, and so maybe, you know, people are stressed out over coronavirus, and I don't know, maybe he was out planting these maybe around the neighborhood, maybe to distribute them to make sure that everyone had their videos. But so if you'll notice, this is the story of I guess it's Mr. and Mrs. and Mr. DuPont from Videodrome. I actually checked that URL. It's dead now. But so it is an adult sex film, in case you were wondering. But also it's the Ontario version, so it's not just the regular story of Mr. and Mrs. DuPont. It's the Ontario version. Okay, so then this is where another videotape was dropped off somewhere around my neighborhood, and again, maybe this is Corona related, maybe not. I'm not too sure. This one is called Animal Trainer. Yeah. Okay. So that's what's happening around my neighborhood during the Corona event, let's call it. So maybe you guys can send me an email, or you can. So this is a YouTube stream, so feel free to comment in the YouTube chat. Maybe if there's some weirdness going around your neighborhood. Are people dropping off DVDs in your neighborhood? Maybe. I don't know how it is out in Halifax. Maybe Scott can help us out with people's weird VHS viewing activities out in Halifax. Okay, so that was just a little funny happening that I thought I'd share with all you folks. Another thing that I wanted to share with you is that I'm part of this super cool professional association in Toronto called the UXPA, and we put a lot of events on in the city. We've put on a couple, like this picture here is from Loblaw Digital. We put one on there. Unfortunately, we're all trapped inside, but what we decided to do is take it online. So actually next week around this same time, we're having an event featuring a couple of great speakers. And basically this is sort of our soft skills series. The speakers are going to talk about self-doubt and self-awareness in the design industry. So we have a couple of great speakers lined up. If you go to the uxpa.to and you can hit this button, reserve your spot. Tickets are $5 and they go to frontline workers to help out with the Corona pandemic. All right. So that is basically my only plug that I wanted to do. But let's talk about some design stuff. Some of you may know that I do enjoy drinking the alcohol once in a while. Not just while I do live streaming podcasts, but other times as well. And I think I've discovered my hero. So this gentleman here, his name is Richard, and he's discovered a way to combine drinking alcohol and getting drunk and UX design. So this guy, it's called Drunk UX. And what this guy will do is he will get very drunk and then review your website. And that seems like kind of a joke, but that's legitimate. Like, how often when you use Uber, when you got your mobile phone, and you're looking for a taxi cab, what percentage of the time are you doing that? Are you pretty drunk? Probably a fair bit. So I don't know. Maybe this guy has discovered something. So he'll send you a screencast. You'll get a video of him as a new user and a designer trying to keep it together. So I guess he does a couple shots. Maybe there's like a fee structure. Like 2 shots is $500. 4 shots is $600, $700, $800. Not really sure. Well, let's see. Maybe he has a fee structure in here. No, it's just an email. Okay. Well, this guy is pretty cool and basically my hero. So he's done stuff for Gizmodo. I guess a lot of Gizmodo readers are drunk. HubSpot. I've never really heard of any of these websites, but so I think he has the price in here. Did he say $500 or something? Well, let's say he does this for $500 times 52. That's a lot of beer drinking money that this guy makes. Press, and he's in the press a lot too. I guess that's why I'm talking about it. It's kind of interesting. So if you have a website out there and you're curious about how drunk people use your website, you could contact this guy, or you could contact me. I'll do it probably cheaper than this guy. I'll pay for my own booze. So subscribe to my YouTube channel or send me an email, cbranje@gmail.com, and I will review your website while drunk. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of fun things I always like to do is look at examples of bad design, right? One of the good ways you can learn about stuff is to take a look at stuff that's done sort of poorly. And one thing that I've noticed is that, let's see here, let's have a look at this, is bathrooms are especially public accessible bathrooms. I've been in a few of these, and this has actually happened to me. So you go into the bathroom, and so there's a button here, right? Push to lock. So if you, let's say you sit down, right, and you're getting ready to do your take care of business, and then you realize, oh shoot, I didn't lock the door. I better reach over and lock the door. Well, the problem is you have these two buttons over here. This button right here, what this does when you hit this button is the main huge wheelchair accessible door opens up really slowly and stays open for about 30 seconds. So don't ask me how I know that. I've just made an observation. So if I was a designer, I would put this button over here, because why would you want to open up the door while you're on the throne? All right. Here's another example of so many examples of these. Why is every single elevator button thing terribly, terribly designed? So this is, a lot of this stuff is implementation, but this is a design problem. How many times do you think people actually meant 5, but press 4, right? This is a visual design, right? You could just take this, slice this down the middle, and move this group over like half a centimeter would do it, as long as it's a little further away than it is from there. And then you would know. Let's see. Here's a few other ones. Ooh, that one looks pretty... I don't even know... Oh, okay. So, like that... Okay, that's not so bad, I guess. But why is it zigzagged like that? That's weird. Okay. Another bad elevator. Let's look at another one. All right. Yeah. Yeah. No idea what's going on there. We got labels and buttons, but not for everyone. I guess they got lazy. They made it all the way up to 46, but stopped at 47 for some reason. That's odd. That's weird. Down here, it's fine. They got labels and buttons. But yeah, this whole elevator thing is a giant, complete, utter mess. Let's look at this one. What's this one? 4. 4th floor has rooms 301 to 328. Interesting. Floor 3, 201 to 217. Well, I guess they didn't want to spend... It probably costs a lot of money to change like 20 signs. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But that seems like bad design. Let's see a few other examples here. Okay, this is one of a... this is some marketing dongle thing for America Airlines. Might not be the best approach for a... I wonder what they were thinking. Or if this is even real. Maybe this is fake. I did find this on the internet. But you never know. You never know. Okay, here is a weird one. There's actually a bunch of these. No entry, entrance only. Okay. How about this one? Here. Entrance, not an entrance. Weird. It almost makes me think it's a translation issue or something. Why would that come up more than once? Okay, here's an interesting one. This is a control knob for, I don't know, an oven maybe, or yeah, 200 degrees Celsius. That's an oven. But you got these, yeah, there's less. So you have less. I don't know. Maybe this is maybe this isn't bad. maybe they did a study and found, but I don't know. When do you ever turn your oven to 75 degrees? That's probably bullshit. There's no reason to really have, right? Everyone just goes up here. You need this kind of, there's more accuracy down here than you need up here. So they should switch that and put that up here. Okay, let's do like one more, and then I think maybe we'll get to our first guest. What do you guys think? Oh, this is a good one. This is kind of more fashion design. Mr. Poopy Pants. Yeah. Huh. I wonder how that got past. How many levels, how many people had to see that? Did it pass by? And people are like, no, that looks fine. That doesn't look like shit at all. Okay, you know what? This is where we'll end, because this is classic door stuff, right? Yeah, that's weird. Why would they even put a sign? Because that's probably you got to push it, and so someone just got the door wrong here. Let's see. We probably have one more door thing here. Let's see. Do we have another door? Norman door is what they call it. Oh yeah, here we go. This is, I bet, how many people do you think run face first into this glass stuff? And then this door has I think it's the same pull handle on either side. Basically, this door is in every office in downtown Toronto. And even after I've been in an office for a year, I still, every time I pull when it's a push. Even if there's a sign there. I guess I'm an idiot. Okay. I think, how are my segments? Were those good segments? I think I kind of need, maybe I need like intro music or something for my segments. Like, maybe, should I bring out my guitar? Yeah, maybe. No, maybe not. Okay. Let's see how our guests are doing. I kind of have them on ice a little bit. Let's bring up, should we bring up Scott? All right, here he is, Scott. Can you, are you still on mute, Scott? Can you?
I just unmuted myself.
All
Hello.
righty.
Cheers.
Hello. Cheers to you. Cheers to you. Corona here.
Unlike you, a real beer. I'm drinking tonight Tatamagouche Deception Bay IPA. It's delicious. One of my favorites.
Okay.
You can see, while waiting for you, I've already gotten through some of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I figure this is sort of like my good deed. Like, this company cannot be doing very well at the moment, right? With this, it's just Labatt's or something, anyways.
Actually, I think they're probably doing well. I've seen a few people come out of the liquor store with cases of Corona, probably going to a internal Corona party or whatever they want, right?
I guess maybe, yeah, maybe it's sort of a reverse psychology thing or something. But
so one comment about the what you're finding around your neighborhood with the COVID. So
yeah,
when I was a kid, we used to find dirty magazines, when building the fort. So it's really, I'm glad to see technology has risen the bar.
Man, I have a dirty mag story too.
20 years, maybe.
I don't know what it is about Scarborough and early 90s pornography, but when we were remodeling our house and we took out the floor in the basement, a bag fell out of the floor and it was filled with like 20 1990s porn mags. So I don't know, there's like a cache or something around here that's just getting out.
20 years, we'll be digging up USB sticks with XXX on it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how are you holding out? How are things out in Halifax in terms of this stuff in general, and like how are you with your work and stuff and all that? Are you still working?
Yeah, same as everywhere. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm able to work full time at home. I mean, I spent 50% of my job working remotely anyway. So I'd go into the office for meetings and get things done, and then come in the afternoon to get real work done. But now we're doing it with families at home, and I have 2 children. So yeah, it's challenging. Everybody's having a challenge with it. But we're getting into routines, showering every day, wearing pants, very, very important things. Getting some outdoor time, making sure you're well stocked with alcohol, just like
yeah. I kind of chuckled when they made the weed stores essential services, but when they were thinking about the liquor store, I was like, whoa, come on now, let's not get too You know, if I'm gonna be in the house for 6 months, it looks like this is gonna go on for.
It's a fine line between civilized people and our complete orange.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think fine line is defined by the liquor stores staying open. So cheers to those.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, let's not dwell on too much on Corona. I'm sure everyone's sick to death of thinking and talking about hearing about that. Let's talk about you a little bit. So, tell me how you got started in product design. You know, you don't have to go through your resume, but give me like, because with UX and product design, I've met people from all different walks, right? Like I've met people who train in kinesiology, people who are in psychology, people who are in graphic design, computer science. So I think everybody has like a unique story. But so how did you come up in product design?
So I started out as a graphic designer. I think at one point I started doing enough website design where a lot of products at the time were put on website. And I'm cutting through a lot of fat here of my career, but at that time, you know, the iPhone also came out. So, you know, startups were the newest thing as well. Actually, that's around the time I met you, Carmen, you know, 15 some years ago when I first met you. Or maybe it wasn't that quite long ago, but yeah, so I come from a graphic design background, and then quickly when I got into product design, I realized what a leap. I mean, there really is a leap there. But as a graphic designer, I was searching for what makes the rules on product design. And this is before, you know, even UX was a common term, you know, HCI. So when I actually found the Nielsen Norman Group, and that to me lit a light bulb as something that I was naturally doing as a designer or naturally good at. So I started learning from them and actually wound up getting certified them in the long run in Toronto. And that's what gave me the bulk of that took me the leap from being a graphic designer to what I call, you know, a UX designer or product designer. And there's so much more to UX design and that than graphic design. But I think graphic designers have a certain knack about knowing good UX to a level. And after that, that's when the UX design takes over. Otherwise, you know, and dominates or dictates what your graphic design is. Good UX and good research, which is part of the UX, will give you a good design, good information architecture, good visual design, good interaction design. All these factors are different facets of UX design that make a product good, which is, in my opinion, much bigger than graphic design. So graphic design was my entry into it. My education was actually working, you know, I started out with an agency, and then I got into app development when, like I said, when the iPhones first came out. I was involved with a partner in Toronto, and we were into app development. So that was my birth of product design. And the Nielsen Norman Group was my guiding principle. It actually gave me, you know, the heuristics of usability gave me a checkbox to actually say that my designs not only are good, but they're good because of this, based on research that was done, rather than just subjective opinion. Anyway, sorry to babble on, but that's exactly.
So, so a lot of so I teach a little bit at York, and I have a lot of people, kind of probably you, like 10 years ago. So like in graphic design. So what would you say to them? What's the delta? What's the difference between graphic design? Because I mean, it's part of it, like visual design and aesthetics. It's definitely part of product design and UX. What's the extra stuff that they might need to look at?
Learn how to work with software engineers. Learn how to work with developers versus.
Hey, we got one on the show right after you.
Yeah. Get yourself involved with people that are building products, not websites. I'm not trying to trash a certain genre here, but the agency is your 2-week UX designer. UX design goes much beyond 2 weeks. We all know that. It involves a lot of research, a lot of involved in the product with product managers and product owners and proper development teams and proper methodologies in place to make that all successful. And a graphic designer is tends, in my experience, not to be exposed to those things in their career. They're used to working in shorter sprint Kanban models or weekly status reports and stuff. And that may have changed since I've been in the industry, but that's how I worked. And when you get into software engineers and development, it's much more structured. And to me, that is that's where your graphic input is the most valuable. For me to be able to talk, you have another guest come on, Keane, for him to be able to interpret designs, that are done properly without redoing them 6 months later, is very important. So if I spend 2 weeks or 3 weeks making mistakes, I could save him 6 weeks or a team of development time. So that value, you know what I mean? So that's the difference between and graphic design, and nothing against it. I come from that background, so I'm not crapping on it. I'm just saying this is how you evolve on that. If you want to evolve that, surround yourself with product designers, products, and people that are bringing enterprise, because they tend to have or startups for that matter is a great starting point for UX designers, because often they wear many hats. So I could spit off. Literally, I could go on for much longer than 20 minutes about it.
But so tell me about where you work. What's your setup like? What is it like? What are your clients like? What's the scene like in Halifax compared to Toronto? Because you kind of were in both.
Okay, so I work for a company that works into retail or transformation. We have a software side of things with a suite of products, and we have a consulting side of things. Even though we are retail experts, our focus is around telcos. So a lot of our products are helping telcos all over the world, in the Caribbean, in Africa, in Britain, in Canada, and the US. So all these products have different touch points. So I work on stuff from anything from kiosks to point of sale, Android and iOS apps for self-care. I work on a web application. Currently, my focus is around a web application and a self-care app for telcos. I won't say who, but yet to be launched in the next few months. So, and what was the other question? I forgot. Outside of
just like kind of who people that so you talked about your clients, just like so it's an agency that you work for, and so tell me how that's kind of set up.
No, it's not an agency. So
okay.
There was a little bit of history of the company. The company started as a music company, actually, that sold musical instruments, and the owner needed a way to track inventory. This is 25 years ago. And so he hired a couple developers, or a few developers from Dalhousie. He brought them in and he built it. And it kind of evolved from there. And then that original owner is still involved in our company. He's not part of the active group. He's more of the one of the partners of the group. But taken over by a great CEO with a great vision of how to make our company. We're competing with some big boys out there in the telco market.
Right. Okay, so you have like a service. You guys have a software as a service.
Yeah, we provide software as a service, apps to all these, and then we'd walk into a telco, and we have consultants that say, okay, here's how your store design is. Here's how you should be talking to your customers. Here's some of the literature that you should be doing, and then we have products that actually support that. So when you walk into that, Apple Store experience of walking in and say, hi, how are you? And there's somebody there with a tablet, and then they go on and transfer. So what are you here for? And they direct you into the right line of traffic. Right. After that line of traffic, they pick up the sale to while you're there. They sell you something on a tablet while showing you the phone. They pick out your plan. They do all this. And then they transfer that order into a point of sale. So they walk over to the endpoint, the point of sale, or on the spot, and they're able to export that customer in an expedient fashion. Lineups for kiosks, for bill payments and stuff to speed those things, because there's a lot of problems in telcos that with long lineups. If you ever been on lineup or on a call center, if you call the call center to get a bill, you got to pay your bill and then change your plan. They have to change you over to a different department. That's a different system as well, right? And a different database and everything. And sometimes those don't always talk to each other. I work for a company that builds all those products that actually do talk to each other. So we're trying to, and
I see.
We build the product and the integration go around that.
Right. So Are you involved in like because this is kind of what gets me interested now in UX is like the operations side of it more so, and like I find a lot of the interface stuff, a lot of the challenges have been worked out. You know, if you need like a login form or a form to do whatever, it's kind of that pattern's been worked out. You can go find it. There's a solution somewhere. A lot of the stuff is like what you were talking about, like, oh, how do we get this lineup to be like 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes, right? So like, are you involved in that side of it much? And how does that work?
Yeah, okay, that's cool. Actually brought me to some travel around the world, right? So I went down to the Caribbean, and I won't name the carriers that I worked for there, but I did observation testing of, and I noticed this. So we had a software that used to, when you walked into the room, used to track why people were there. And so we designed this software that when you came in, Carmen, you'd give me your name, I'd look you up, and I'd know everything about you, and then the person would be able to call your name. When I went down there and we piloted the software, outside the store in the morning were 15 people waiting. So the first person in line that got stopped actually got last in line. So it actually turned out to be quite fantastic. And that observation in that pilot allowed us to adjust our software to make that not happen again. So that first person in line was directed properly. And we changed, it didn't only change the software, it changed how the behavior and the use of that software. And that's where I come in a lot of times. And then I try to pass those designs. I don't mind passing designs off. And I work with my product manager as well on that.
Yeah, you know, I find that observation, just go there and stand there and just watch for a couple minutes. That's worth like 1 million interviews a lot of times, you know, because you'll see stuff that like people, they won't even think to articulate, or they can't articulate, or they don't remember or whatever. But you just see, like you said, oh, actually, the guy that got there at 4 a.m, he's getting fucked over by this thing.
Yeah, so, I'm not subjective about it. What I do is if I see somebody go in the wrong lineup, for example, they're in the wrong lineup and it's going to cause them grief, I let it happen and I check it off. And then I let it happen again and I check it off. So I quantify the behavior. I don't just say that because I observed it, because that tends to be the problem. When you ask that question to somebody, what's the problem in your store? They're going to say, the manager's going to reach out and he's going to be the loudest voice in the room and he's going to say, this is the problem. When I go in there, I tell them what the actual problem is. I say, no, man, you got people in your lineup for 10 minutes. They're already pissed off before they even get to you. You know what I mean? And then they're blaming the problem. That's the value of it. And if you think about making the wrong turns in development and going through with a product and the teams it costs to pay them and go on down the road, it's a no-brainer to send me to the Caribbean and put me in that lineup and let me observe those things so we build our products as users tend to use them, right?
Right. So how do, I still run, and even in today, so like UX is kind of mature-ish, right? Like I'd say it's been around, that term has been, it's what, maybe 20-ish years now? Like,
well, Jacob Nielsen.
Maybe a little less.
Yeah, I think it's,
Don Norman coined the term, right? Anyway, but so even today, after 20 years of that, I've run into a lot of people that think like, oh, product design is just graphic design or something like that, and not like all this stuff that you were just talking about. So how do we do that? I tell my students, you got to avoid being a pixel pusher, right? You don't want to just be the guy to go into Illustrator or whatever, or Sketch, and like move this button from here. You want to be doing what you're doing, is researching and figuring out the problem and then solving that problem. So how do we make that better for people coming up in UX design? How do we fix that problem?
I think how I did it, okay? And this worked for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Nielsen Norman Group has 10 or 12 heuristics of design. Everything I test and research is around those heuristics. Everything I do. When I look at my own designs or critique my team's designs, I look at those heuristics. Are they checking off all of those? And they don't always all have to be checked off. But are they
some of them conflict.
Value. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, if any graphic designer, otherwise you're designing in the dark. That's what I call it. You're designing based on your subjective opinion and experience, which is wrong. I should be designing based on the users, how users react and use the product, right? And that's why we go out and observe these people. And you said it at the beginning. It's the background. I wish I came from a psychology background in some way, but I think designers have something that psychologists don't, and that's a knack for cutting through the fat on some of these designs. Now, if some of these designers can learn how to actually check off whether their designs are good or not, heuristics of Jacob Nielsen, and do some proper testing and research, then they can I hate to say the word validate those designs, but their designs will be much stronger.
Yeah.
Working
At least get some kind of data, some
yeah.
rigor.
What I find the biggest problem with some graphic designers is their own ego.
Yeah. Well, we all have that problem, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But UX design should really not be like that. It should be about it's data.
Yeah,
it's data-driven design. That's what,
Cool.
Otherwise, you get hurt feelings. I've seen it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you gotta understand you're not designing for yourself, right?
That's right.
You gotta be egoless and empathize. If we're gonna get all design thinking and whatever.
User journeys, user personas, all these are very important, but they're all very small, very pieces. You have to connect that all together in the end, make a design, and then be able to transfer that design into a development team and let it be interpretable. Whether they have UI libraries, UI standards, UX standards, or whatever, and then you set them up for success. So it's not just the design. It's you're going to talk to Keane here. If I waterfall or agile, whatever I pass to him should be thoroughly tested.
Okay, I think we're nearing the end of our time, and I think we'll switch over to Keane. But it was great talking with you, buddy, and I hope things in Halifax stay good for you. I guess being in the digital space, it's as conducive to working from home as it gets. So we're kind of in a good spot there. Hopefully, things keep staying good. So, but anyways, thanks so much for coming on and talking about your experience. We should do this again, make it a semi regular thing.
Absolutely, I'd love to come on. It's great.
Okay.
Thanks for having me. Hi, Toronto. I missed you.
All right. Okay. See you later, bud.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so we're gonna switch over to Keane. Hey, dude. How's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for being on. So, how has the corona been treating you?
Well, I'm one of the lucky people that can work from home in the digital sphere, just like you. So it just means that I have to be able to set up my desk comfortably enough that I can sit here for 40 hours a week. I got to be able to go outside every once in a while to get some fresh air and groceries and all that. I do get a little stir crazy, but can't complain too much.
Yeah.
There's some people that are really suffering out there.
Yeah. I guess kind of as terms of a company to work for, like Loblaw's pretty good at the moment, right? Like everyone wants groceries, everyone wants prescription drugs, so it's good to be working on something that's needed, I guess, at this time, right? So.
Yeah, we touch millions of people. It's pretty. I'm actually pretty happy with the product that we're working on because we are making an impact. And even like people at our company, I know internally you've seen where people will actually just go and volunteer and like work at the stores because they really need people there right now too.
Yeah,
it's a pretty good company. You'd be hard pressed to find companies that make an effort as much as Loblaw and Loblaw Digital does.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a good point made the other day, like having a family-owned business with someone like the Westons, like Galen at the front. He's not the type of CEO that wants to just jump in there, make like a quick short-term buck and then get out, right? I think if anyone's in it for the long term, he's probably it,
I mean, they're the most storied family in Canada, right? They're the definition of long term.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so how does it feel to be talking to the person that you learned everything from, man? For the person you owe everything, your whole life, your skill, your programming skills, your life skills, all of your success. I think you probably owe to me, right?
I probably owe a lot to you, actually. But
Yeah. So
to
well,
the people
yeah,
watching, Carmen
right.
and I met because he was actually one of my professors back when I was at Centennial College for software engineering with a focus on
Yep.
interactive media and gaming.
Yep.
Um, I think at the time you weren't yet Carmen Branje PhD. You were Carmen Branje
I was
PhD.
in the
Uh,
process. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
So
because yeah, I was
that was
probably
a while back.
yeah, like 2011, 2012 ish around
Something
there.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So you've probably, in all seriousness, you've probably gone way ahead of me. So I think I taught you intro programming or something, right?
It was
Or
simulation design. So
oh
you had
yeah, I
us
remember that course. Yeah, that was fun.
we were model we you had us program elevator simulations, and in order
Yeah.
to do so, we would stand in elevators all day, count how long it would take to get between floors.
Yeah.
We would have to time how long it takes to close the door. We would have to do things like to make it more realistic rather than just instantly going from floor one, floor two, floor three.
Yeah.
You taught us how to look at the actual usage of the elevator and what what actually happens, and we're simulating that rather than our assumptions of things.
Yeah. So how did you get from simulating elevators to Android development?
So
What happened there?
as I mentioned, I was in school for it was a game development and like interactive media program. From there, I realized and learned that the games industry is not the kindest to their employees. And I moved from game development purely to games analytics. I was in a games analytics company, and I started there as like a technical writer, but I moved up into like SDK development. Got really interested in Android, something I also learned at school, and I worked on the Android SDK that it actually eventually went into like Pokemon Go and like a bunch of like different games. But we we were working with the SDK for a while. I eventually moved to not really a digital agency, but a transformation company where kind of like Scott, we worked with transforming the way our clients would work, as well as creating products for them. And that's where I got an opportunity to work on application development. I worked on apps that millions of people were downloading. I got to do a lot of hands-on research. Instead of standing in elevators all day, they flew me down to Florida. I boarded some cruises. I went down to California to work closely with the clients there. And at the company, near the end, I was doing less coding and doing more of the team building and the team leading and the process management until I came over to Loblaw Digital, where, funnily enough, we bumped into each other again, because I believe you started like a month after me.
Yeah,
And
beginning of this year or last year, 2019.
And then they moved me to your team, and we got to work together on an app
Yep.
until you left us like a month ago.
Yeah, they kicked me off. They were like, enough of this guy, man. But yeah, I'm working on grocery actually right now because it's so high demand, right? Even they're trying to like scramble and get a whole like new capacity up, and they're trying to do new things for help people out who are struggling and trying to figure, because everything's changed now, right? Like, and no one knows how it's gonna go back, but they're not really sure how or when or like. So yeah, it's good to be working on grocery stuff right now because everybody needs groceries and things.
The way I see it is, even if things do go back, the fact that everyone's at home now, we're using these order takeout apps and like delivery apps, and whether it's not necessarily that people are going to get used to it, but people did get used to it with Amazon when they came in and they started delivering groceries and like subscription services and stuff. They got used to it when Netflix made it even more convenient for them to watch stuff streaming as opposed to mailing cassettes
Getting
back and forth
VHS
or
tapes.
DVDs.
VHS tapes. That's the best format, really, is VHS.
Especially the ones you
Especially
find
if
in Scarborough.
Yeah, on the side of the road. That's the highest quality entertainment possible. So Netflix
I'll let
sucks.
you test that.
Yeah.
Is that something you test when you're drunk as well?
VHS? Yeah, absolutely. You cannot watch VHS without several drinks under your belt. But yeah. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about design and development. Because I think probably a lot of designers and a lot of developers, they're maybe a little scared of each other. Right? They're like, you know, at a dance when the girls and the boys are kind of at the end on the walls, you know, and they're looking at each other and they're like, whoa, what's this weird people. So I think we should talk more. There should be more discussion between tech people and design people. And one thing that's always, you know, probably the most obvious thing to talk about is because where we interact the most is the handoff between the stuff that I put together, the assets, or however I'm trying to make my design intentions clear. What does that look like? What do the developers need? Because I think a lot of designers, UI designers, graphic designers, they've never really done any code, right? And they don't really understand how you do a layout in like HTML or like in Android or whatever. And so, okay, here's one specific thing we can kind of start the discussion on. So I think I've seen this for 10 years since I started doing design at RBC. Is part of the handoff. So let's say you do a design with a mock-up, and this is how the screen is going to go. Especially, I remember at RBC, this has probably changed now. This is a few years at RBC, but I've seen this in a lot of design handoffs, where, for example, they're giving like pixel sizes of like, okay, this button is going to be 80 pixels big, and it's going to have 20 pixels of space, and this font is going to be this pixel size. And I think as someone who has a little teeny bit of development experience, I think that's not the way you want to go. I think you want to be more relative in how a designer describes their intentions to the developer. What do you think about that? Am I out to lunch?
Yeah, no, I mean, so the pixel way of communicating design is a really old way of looking at it. It doesn't take into effect the different form factors that your new design was actually going to live in. Because if we're talking about web, for example, I might have something that sits on a browser and somebody's widescreen monitor, but the same design has to work well on a mobile app. It might have to work as a web design, or it might be on someone's TV. People might be browsing the website on the TV, or these days even a car. The response to this is responsive design, where you're trying to look at things with less of a hard mentality of like numbers, and more about like, okay, well, how can we design with a flow? And to touch back on like how the handoff works is usually with we don't rely on one set of tools, or whereas before we would just get not screen grabs, but like mock-ups made in like Photoshop or whatever. This is what it should look like. These days we work with tools like Envision or
Figma.
Figma, yeah. And we see live versions of the app, a prototype version, where not only do you have the actual visualization of what it might be, we have different variations of that screen, or we'll have places where the designer just leaves comments and we can comment back and we can communicate, because it's not the old school way of thinking of the designer has a design and the developers have to implement it and that's it, we move on. I found that the most successful projects I've worked on have always been when there's a tight collaboration with the designers and the developers. The best ones have always been where I'm communicating as a developer to the designers almost every single day. They are educating the developers in terms of user experience and user flow and intent. And conversely, the developers will inform the design decisions based on constraints that the application might have to work around.
Right. Like, I mean,
so
it's a negotiation almost, right? Because like as a designer, you have all these like wants and like, oh, I want this cool thing to fucking come in and spin around and like jump on this thing and it's going to be so awesome. And then you're like, dude, that's going to take me fucking 4 weeks to make. Do you really want that? And then I'm like, well, maybe, you know what I mean?
So I love that you brought it up. Like, yeah, it'll take 4 weeks to make, because that's usually like the constraints that designers will be thinking of. Whereas we'll also think about like, well, how much is this going to affect the user's data usage? How much is this going to affect the user's battery, right? Also things like, well, what are we thinking of in terms of smaller devices, right? Or what are we thinking of if they were to run this on a tablet? Also, this is gonna take me 4 fucking weeks to make, man. Like,
yeah.
So like all of the above, right?
Yeah.
So
I must say, I think our team had a pretty good back and forth, right? We were always we were a little bit loose with the design a little bit. Like we left some, not gaps, but we didn't specify some things. And then if the gap was too big for you to just bridge yourself, you'd reach out, say, hey, what should this be? And we'd be like, oh, and we'd tell you, and then we'd go. And I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, like I've worked for companies where the design was set in stone, and whether or not it worked, if you said 6 pixels, it would have to be 6 pixels. Whereas when you actually implement that, it just does not look good. It doesn't work. The user can't touch it. The way we've worked is more along the lines of like, well, this is what I intend. Work with me. Help me figure out the way we're going to actually make it work. And the best part was where if I don't understand, you're still there. You haven't left and like dropped the design off and like walked away. You were literally down the hall.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can tell you my intent. Like, okay, I need this to be like this, so that the user doesn't have to go back and forth 10 times to do this thing. And you're like, okay, well, we could do that with a native component that would take 1 second to do versus this cockamamie thing that you have, which would take 2 weeks to do. And so I think a lot of that is missing in the process, right? Yeah. Cool.
I think that a lot of it also comes from, like you said, a fear of talking to people that are different. There's a lot of designers that don't want to talk to developers that don't want to talk to designers. Whereas the best teams I've worked on, the designers and developers not only go hand in hand, but so do the PMs and the testers. And it's something where like you can't work in silos, and you have to collaborate at every step of the way. And there's no one set group of people that are exactly right, 100% correct. And it's only through that collaboration and figuring out where we're wrong do we find that that middle ground where the actual correct answer comes from.
Yeah. Or at least as close to ideal as we can get, given all the constraints and considerations, let's say.
Yeah. Compromise is where everybody's unhappy, right?
Right. Well, that's the other side that you can't let it get that, because there's like, compromise and working together, but then there's like, man, the security team totally fucked over the experience now, so I got to put in a 30 character password that I forget every time. So, I think sometimes there's still room for battles.
Yeah.
But I get, especially with developers and designers should be best buds. They gotta be like right there together and kind of working together. Otherwise it's just gonna be garbage comes out.
I've also been on teams where you'll have the product manager lead everything, and usually when it comes down to it, those teams will will start to open up, where initially you're not allowed to talk to designers, you're not allowed to talk to QA, you're not allowed to talk to business, but because that's the PM's job, which is fine. But if you want to get things done, and you don't want one person to be that that bottleneck, well, you got to open it up to collaboration.
Right. But that takes a little bit of trust. Trust but verify, you know? Trust but verify.
I've also found that being data driven is usually the best route to success. You test, right? You do user experience testing, you use mocks, you use prototypes. InVision was really good for that. Or even just like those, I don't know what you call those tests, where you'll have a screenshot of a screen, and then you'll say, okay, well, what would you click here if you're trying to get to wherever? And then, oh, you click there? Hold on, let me get you another image, and like show that. Where it's like a really, really low level prototype, just collecting the data. Click test, I guess, right? That sort of thing is integral for building trust, because it's not that developers are necessarily data driven. We say we are, but we're humans too. We have emotions. So like by creating those tests, you're creating trust for the design, the developer, for business. And this is how we figure out which solutions are actually solutions, right? As opposed to just features that we want.
Yeah, makes sense, man. All right, we're getting to that time. It's kind of getting late. But before we go, tell me why Android is much, much, much better than iOS.
Why Android is much, much, much better than iOS. It depends what you're looking for.
I mean, everybody knows it in their heart, really. Even the iPhone users, they know, really, right? They know.
I think the main thing for me is Android gives you a lot more freedom, which means that there's a lot more issues on Android phones that you won't get on iOS phones. But it depends what you're looking for. Certain users really like to be funneled down a flow, and certain users like to make it their own way.
Yeah,
I'm the
Android latter. Freedom. Not like the dark side, man. The iOS is the dark side, and Android is the Rebel Alliance. That's how I see it, man.
Yeah. Right? I'm contractually obligated to say yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we didn't talk any nerd talk, man. I kind of gave up on Picard.
Oh no, you got to finish it. It's only like 10 episodes.
I know, but you know what I've realized? I'm not a Star Trek fan. I'm a Next Generation fan. You know?
Yes.
And old senior citizen Picard, I don't know. I'm used to like the greatest leader that ever lived, not this like old guy. You know?
Well, if it makes you feel any better, there's some boring diplomacy later on in the series too.
Oh, okay. All right. Keane, thanks so much for coming on, man. I think this was fun. I had a lot of fun. We still have viewers at the end of the show. This is amazing. What are you people doing? Go get a life. Well, you're stuck inside. There's nothing else to do except watch this. So, cool. All right, thanks again. Scott, let me bring you back, and just to thanks again, buddy. Really appreciate it. Let's do this again sometime. Oh, you're still on mute. Mute. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was listening in on the talk. I had a lot to say.
All right. Maybe next time we'll do a three-way. We can all have a little discussion. We can have a talking head thing. I'll figure out my system a little more.
Keane's right on. I was just nodding my head and agreeing with him the whole time.
Yeah. Cool.
100%.
All right, boys. See you later, and stay safe.
Stay safe. Take care, everyone.
See you later, man.
All right, thanks for having us.
Yep.